Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Brassmonke X. So, if you've been following along, you'd know that we've been working on Project Lich King here. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go over to my playlist, check it out. You can see me build this entire lower receiver. But since the lower receiver is complete, we're going to be moving on to the upper receiver now. Today, what we're doing is we're going to be installing the barrel. Now, it's a pretty simple install. I've done a few videos on this in the past on other projects. I know I have a video on Project Starling where I show you how to install the barrel, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for Project Lich King here as well. But as usual, before we do anything, let me just show you my disclaimer here. All right. Now, to start off, you're going to need a few things. You're not going to need much, though. You're going to need your upper receiver. Okay. Obviously, you're going to need a barrel. And you're going to need a barrel nut. Usually, you don't need any more than that. I have to have a spacer for my barrel nut. I'll show you why when we get to it. As far as tools go, all you really need is an armorer's wrench and a torque wrench. Now, I'm foregoing the torque wrench here. Because I know how tight I got to put this thing. Now, if you don't do these things often, go ahead, get yourself the torque wrench and do it. I'm not using the torque wrench today. Again, I will show you why when we get to it in a little bit. I like to use white lithium grease. And I also use a little anti-seize lubricant. I put it on the threads just in case you ever want to get your barrel nut off so you can replace the barrel in the future. I mean, if you don't ever plan on doing it, you can go ahead and even put some thread locker on there. But for the off chance that you may want to replace your barrel, I like to put the anti-seize lubricant because if you don't put that on there, you're going to have a really difficult time getting that barrel nut back off in the future. But let me just go ahead and we'll get started and I'll show you guys how we do this. Now, typically what we do is I use one of these I guess you could call them a jig. It's an upper receiver jig or block or whatever you want to call it. Now, normally you put your upper receiver in here and you clamp this down into your vise, and this is what holds your upper receiver while you install your barrel. Now, I can't use this today because our upper receiver that we're using for this build, it is an extruded upper receiver. Okay, so the dimensions on the outside, if you can see here, it's shaped a little bit different than a normal upper receiver. Let me show you. I think I have one laying around here. There we go. See, if you look at that, it's a lot thinner, the outside walls. The extruded one's a little thicker. So unfortunately, it doesn't fit in my upper receiver block there. Okay. So we're going to have to go old school, and I'm going to show you how we do this if you don't have one of those jigs. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to come over to our vise. We're going to get a rag, something pretty thick, all right, because we don't want to screw up our upper receiver. We're going to put this in here. We're going to clamp it down, okay? Now, you don't want to go too tight. You don't want to screw this thing up. You just want it to be able to hold it in place while you're working on it, okay? That looks pretty good. Let me adjust this camera angle a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. There we go. That should work. Now, the next step is actually installing your barrel. Now, obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory, guys. You got your muzzle end, which mine happens to be threaded, okay? Doesn't always have threads on it. And then you got this end here that goes into your upper receiver. Okay, it's going to have this rim on the back here, which prevents it from going too far in. And there's also, try to get it to focus here, on the very top, at the 12 o'clock position, there's going to be that little nub on there, okay? That's so you can index this into your upper receiver in the proper spot. So on your upper receiver, there's a little cutout for it right here. Okay, so you can't screw this up. It goes right in and clips, and it just kind of clicks into place, kind of. This is where I like to use the white lithium grease. Now, you could forego this step. You don't have to use the white lithium grease. I like to do it because it makes life just a little bit easier. So just go ahead. I put a tiny little bit on here. You don't need a lot at all. Now, some of these barrels can be really tight. Because if you get a barrel that's from a different manufacturer than the upper receiver, sometimes things are a little tight and it's tough to get them on there. So it can't hurt to just go ahead and put a little white lithium grease on here. Get it lubed up a little bit so that when we install it, it slides right into place and we don't have any issues. There we go. Just get that on there, rub it all over. And then we're going to go ahead and take our barrel and just slide it right into the upper receiver like so. And just like that, it pops right in. That little tit on the top goes right into the recess in the upper receiver there. Sorry about the dog barking in the background, guys. That's just Stella. She gets a little angry sometimes. Let me go see what she's barking at. All right. So, we got our barrel in place, and now what you're going to do is, typically you would just take your barrel nut, slide it on, screw it on hand tight, and then move on to the next step. But, I actually need to use a spacer, because my barrel nut, okay, as you can see, it's got all these little holes in it, okay? So I have to index it so that when I'm done screwing it on after I torque it down, these holes, any set of them, doesn't matter. That's why there's this little line on here. I have to make sure that that's at the 12 o'clock position because my handguard has 8 screws that go through the handguard and into the barrel nut to clamp it down to make it really secure. And if this isn't at the 12 o'clock position, when I get that torque down, if these aren't facing completely up, if they're not straight, I'm not going to be able to get my screws into the holes. Okay? So it came with a couple of washers. So I pre-fit this earlier to make sure it would fit on there. And I have to use one of the washers in order to make it fit properly. So we're just going to go ahead, slide one of our washers on. Okay? Stops right there on that little rim on the barrel. Now this is where we use our anti-seize lubricant. Now again, if you're not worried about having to ever change your barrel out and it's the only barrel you're ever going to put on your gun, go ahead. You could even use some thread locker. Just put it on the threads there and you're good to go. But like I said, you never know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the future. I may want to change this out. This may be a little too heavy of a barrel for me. So we're going to see. I'm going to put a little bit of the anti-seize lubricant on there just as a precaution if I ever want to change that barrel out. So you just need a little bit of it right there on the head of your Q-tip. And you just go ahead and put it all around the threads. Make sure you get the top, the sides, the bottom, get it all the way around. Alright, so once that's on, you're going to take your barrel nut. You can't mess this up. There's only threads on one side. The other side's not threaded. You're going to slide that on. And then just go ahead and twist that into place. Now you're going to feel it butt up against the receiver. That's how you know you've gone far enough. Now, normally this is where you get your torque wrench and your armorer's wrench. Now, like I said before, they recommend you torque these things down between 30 and 8. Okay, I've never gone more than 50, and And I've done a lot of AR-15s. And like I said, I've never needed to torque it down more than 50. You can't even get it to torque down more than 50. But on this one, since I don't have a jig to hold it in place, and I don't want to take the chance of screwing anything up, I'm only going to torque it down to like 35, maybe 40. Okay. Now, like I said, I don't need to use the torque wrench. I can get a feel for it, and I just know, so I've been doing this for so long. I can tell when I'm hitting about 40. And like I said, you can't really torque it past 50 in my experience. So I'm just going to go ahead, put our armorer's tool on here. And we'll just go ahead and crank it down. Just like that. And that's it, guys. That's all there is to it. Our barrel is officially installed now on our lower receiver. Not much to it at all. But thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate you watching. And stay tuned. We're going to be finishing up this upper receiver. So come on back, check out our next video. And we'll catch you next time, guys.